So Cecilia is the sixth generation of her family to be the winemaker at this family estate and based in the Mittelrhein, which is the most romantic stretch of the Rhine River with steep slopes on both banks, castle galore, and the odd mermaid, according to Marcel, which I was questioning Cecilia about earlier. Bacharach is a delightful old town with cobbled streets. It's got old hotels and lanes which snake up into the vineyards, of which the Hahn vineyard is one of the best and is mostly owned by the Jost family. I know that Cecilia is extremely busy at the moment, so we really do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy time to talk to us about your family's property. So now I'm going to pass over to you, Cecilia, and welcome.
Hello, everybody. Like mentioned before, my name is Cecilia Jost. I'm the owner and the operator of the winery Toni Jost, named after my grandfather, Toni, who was not the first one in line, but who was, the one who started for us the quality on which we are now relying on. So of those wines that we are producing, I would like to show you today some. Maybe we can start with the PowerPoint presentation to have not just the wine in the glass, but also some views of the vineyard. At first, yes, here we are. Yeah, this is Germany, as you can see. In those colors, you see the wine growing areas of Germany, and the big colors you find more in the south of Germany. The Mittelrhein, as we see in the second picture, next pic, is just this little blue dots along the Rhine River, the big blue line. And you can see here the Mittelrhein, my home area, is a very small area compared to the bigger ones. For example, the green one, this is the famous Rheingau on the other side of the Rhine River, or the orange one, this is Rheinhessen, more south east of the Mittelrhein. Well, our small Mittelrhein area is located on the steep slopes along the Rhine River. And now with the next click, we see exactly where Bacharach, my hometown, is. I am currently at Bacharach at the Mittelrhein. I'm sitting in our tasting room, so you may see some old wood-crafted things around me. Here, this room, we today just use, as you can see, for wine tastings. In the former days, we used to be a wine pub where you can buy our own wine by the glass or even in the bottle, and we served some regional dishes. Today, 25 years ago, my parents decided on cutting out the restaurant business and just focusing on producing wine. So today, this area, our Weinstube, is just used for wine tastings in real life here at Bacharach, or like today, virtually over Zoom. The next click brings us to the vineyards just around Bacharach. You see, my hometown is located on the left side of the Rhine River. So the Rhine River flows towards north. That means to the top of the picture, and those vineyards that we are growing our wines on, they are located on the left side of the Rhine River, and they're partly directly at the Rhine River or in the valley. The next click will show us exactly where the first wine I would like to show you is growing on. The first wine, the Weißburgunder, here we go. That comes from the vineyard on top of my most famous vineyard, Bacharach Hahn. So the next click shows us the wine. This is exactly the vineyard where we picked our Weißburgunder. The Weißburgunder is not a traditionally variety from the Mittelrhein. We are very famously known for Riesling. This is why I'm producing 80% Riesling, just 5% Pinot Blanc, but as a starter for something to pair with food or just to drink in the lovely summertime, Weißburgunder or Pinot Blanc is just my pick. The next click gives us some more detailed information about where exactly the wine is coming from. Our Weißburgunder comes from blue Devonian slate. We will talk later about the special ingredients in the soil, which makes our wine so special and so recognizable. And some loamy clay is also in the soil. For the Weißburgunder, we are not searching for the pure hard slate soil. We also need a little bit loamy clay to keep the water in the soil to get more the full-bodied wine experience and not the very mineral tasting one. We will have today the Weißburgunder, like I am tasting right now with you, and later the Riesling. For the Riesling, we are searching for more the blue Devon slate soil. The orientation of this vineyard is southeast. So here we are looking for the perfect sun inclination. We have a steepness of just 25%. That means going 100 meters straight ahead and going 25 meters up the hill. This is not that steep. Well, it leaves you a little bit breathless if you like to run up and down, but it doesn't give you a heart attack. To the heart attack and really breathtaking wines we are getting later. Pinot Blanc is for us, as I mentioned, a new thing. Those wines that we are tasting right now, they were planted about 10 years ago. 10 years calculated from now, so they were planted in 2011. That makes that the 7th year standing that we took the wine from. And the height above sea level is 200 to 250 meters. When we now click on, that becomes for us very important because I believe it is very important to have wines not down at the Rhine River, but more up. At first, before I'm talking more and more, I need to wet my tongue a little bit and to get more the right to get the right words in my tongue. I need to taste the wine first. For my Pinot Blanc, I always get a hint of not the green apples, but those wonderfully ripe yellow apples, very juicy ones. You don't get a hard acidity, but you get a light refreshing touch with the wines. For me, the Pinot Blanc, in the way that I produce it, it shall remind you that this is a Pinot Blanc coming from a winemaker who loves Riesling. Riesling, with its acidity, with its lightness, is always my perfect idea of wine, and I like to transfer those ideal Riesling types a little bit to my Pinot as well, which makes it not overpowered, not too fat, not oaky or buttery-like, but always on a more or less light and a little bit mineral-driven character. But now, coming back to the different steepness levels. If we are clicking for the next time, you see a funny red line on the PowerPoint. This is not the line on which the river flows. The Rhine River flows at about 70 meters above sea level. This line marks where the wine growing starts. The next click gives us 100 meters. So this is 100 meters above normal null or above sea level, as in English. The second line shows you, the first line shows the basic of where the winemaking starts. The second line now, it is with the next click 200 meters above sea level. In between 100 and 200 meters above sea level, this is where normally, the party is happening. This is where you can guarantee your grapes will always get ripe. This is where my ancestors, my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they were trying to buy as much land as they could, because in the 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, or even before, that was the guarantee that in those areas between 100 and 200 meters above sea level, the wine really gets ripe. Nowadays, just a ripe wine is not what we are looking for. We are looking for a lightness. The next click brings us to 300 meters above sea level, and once more to see the number. There we go. The old traditional vineyards, they were in between 100 and 200 meters above sea level. We have plenty of those great wines. But now, looking on what's happening in the last 14, 20 years, we did not have a bad vintage in terms of the grapes did not get ripe. We had problems with too much acidity. We just had hard, unbalanced wines. We did not have this in the last 20 or 30 years. Nowadays, we are getting, in the very good and very hot years, we are getting very powerful wines. We are getting a lot of alcohol and not so much acidity. We're kind of losing our key figure about what's typical for Riesling. To get this traditional Riesling again, we have to find new ways. Me, personally, as a single winemaker, I cannot stop climate change. But I can do my best to change the vineyard, to get the perfect vineyard for the next 20, 30, 40, or even 50 years. And we found those special vineyards now 100 meters higher than we used to work. Since 15 years, in 2005 we started that. Since 15 years, we are planting each year a little bit more vineyards, not on the very best vineyards, but on those cooler vineyards between 200 and 300 meters above sea level. With the next picture, we will see this from a different angle on. Here we are seeing in the front, very prominent, an old ruin of a castle. On the left side, we see my hometown of Bacharach, and on the right side, we see the last bits of the vineyard we saw earlier on the picture. Now the next clicks will bring us those red lines again. Here we have 100 meters, 200 meters, and finally 300 meters above sea level. Now, since 15 years, we are recultivating only those vineyards between 200 and 300 meters above sea level. This is where we see the best chances to get in the future years ripe wines, ripe grapes, but also enough acidity to not lose our signature character. The Pinot Blanc is one of those wines that we cultivate now between 200 and 300 meters above sea level, on vineyards which are not that steep, which have a little bit more loamy clay in it, where we can find more powerful, more balanced structures, and, very important, a vineyard which can keep more water in the soil. Actually, the picture you are right now seeing, that was a picture taken in the year 2018. 2018, the year where we later taste the Riesling cabinet from, was a year I will always remember as having almost no water in the Rhine River. The picture you see here was taken exactly 2 years ago, at the end of August 2018. In those days, we had water in the Rhine River. When talking about water in the Rhine River, the normal level of water in the Rhine is around 1.18 meters. Currently, now we have around 1 meter of water in the Rhine River. You see here about 80 centimeter water in the Rhine River, and in November 2018, we hit the lowest point ever measured, 23 centimeter water in the Rhine River. This is really climate change working with us. The Rhine River is mainly supported by the glaciers of the Alps, and as soon as they are melted, probably in 30 years, that will be a normal thing during a dry summer. So there's a lot of possibilities or a lot of obstacles coming up our ways, but we have a lot of wine to compare that or to get along. The next click shows us, and once again, yes, shows us the vineyard where we grow this wine. Well, until now, I just talked about the benefits that we are getting from cultivating wine on a higher level. That means it's a little bit cooler. We have a longer ripening time. We are getting more the signature kind of wines, more lighter wines. But on the downside, what does that mean? The next click shows us the biggest threat that we have to cope with those cooler areas, and this is frost. Those pictures were taken this year, earlier that year, on the 12th of May, the night from the 11th to Monday the 12th of May, we had the problem that it was getting cold. The little shoots, the buds of the wines were starting to grow. We had the bud burst. As you see in the left picture, you see the first small leaves growing, but we had before sunrise -5 degrees Celsius. Water freezes at 0 degrees, so we had to do something. And the most easy way to get to save our quality is to light candles. In those areas mostly affected by frost, we put big candles out, which we can enlight. And the closer we are putting those candles to each other, one candle at roughly 20 square meters lights up the surrounding air of up to for up to 2 degrees Celsius. So with those candles burning, we can cut out the most tricky deep temperatures. This is something that we did not had to do in the older days. Well, what are the older days for me? My father took over the winery in the early 70s, and in his time, he never had to do this. 70s, 80s, 90s, it was getting warmer, and we did not suffer those late frosts anymore. Today, we are again suffering late frosts, but this is completely logical, explainable with the climate change, because everything is starting to grow earlier. We have about 2 weeks earlier bud burst than we had normally. The shoots are growing faster, and the warm temperature in the month March, April, and May, they are doing much more for the growing of the grapes than very hot temperatures in the late July or June. So we are having in the early times hotter, warmer temperature, therefore we are getting an earlier bud burst, and then those cold, icy nights that normally would not affect us because we did not have bud burst at those days, they are now infecting us because we had such an early bud burst. And I had to light those candles in 2014, 17, and now 2020. And I guess every 30 years is going to be the new fashion. So from now on, we have to cope with those problems more and more. The next click shows us exactly the damage, what can be done with the frost. On the left side, you see a bud which sprouts some leaves, which looks I'm losing the English word, which looks a little bit like dried up. That was some little leaves which were too much exposed to the cold, and they just froze. They deep froze within, and in the next morning, as soon as the sun rises, you see them drying up and feeling really withery, dried like powdered stuff. On the right-hand side, you see some leaves which made it and some not. On the right-hand side, you see the top leaf, which is looking in a perfectly green condition, lovely looking, not affected by anything. If you go deeper, you see the wire. Next to the wire, there's one bud which is killed because the wire transported coolness, and therefore that bud got killed because it was too much exposed to the coldness running around those metal wires. The bud which was facing downside looks quite healthy and may have survived. This is what we now have to deal with, and I'm sure we have to, that is going to be one of the biggest threats. Of course, you do not have to use fire. You could put water out. You could spray all your wines with a fine nebula of water, so the water freezes around your bursting buds. As long as water freezes, it gives up relatively warmth to the surrounding area, but therefore you need an incredibly much amount of water, more water than you normally would get. And I don't like to rely on a critical night on just water or a pump, which might work or might not work. For me, the candles is, well, call me a romantic, but I rather like to set up a little candle of hope, except just blowing around some water. Next picture shows us the direct environment, which is not just the wines we are planting on, but also the soil that we grow on our wines. Here you see the slate soil, the part down. This is the pure slate rock, like it is formed around 300 million years ago in the Devonian age. And on top, you see those man-crafted stone walls made by just sticking stones above each other. So here we have, it's a traditional wall we have in our vineyards. Here we have a lot of small cracks where lizards, snakes, whatever you can imagine or not is living in, and is also taking its part in the wine growing procedure. Of course, no snake ever helped me with harvesting grapes, but they do their very own thing to pest control. And even so, if a lizard is not doing an actually work for me in the vineyard, I find it very important to have a healthy environment and do something for the birds and the bees to not live in a sterile atmosphere, but to have a, well, in our cultural landscape, to have a little bit of other things growing than just wine. The next click brings us to what is growing on the soil. This is shortly after we fired the wines. We put those candles on in the vineyard. Here you see those shoots which are now growing. They survived. They are very green, healthy. They are growing longer. Now they have about the length of your palm. And on the ground you see, I'm sorry for the lousy quality, this is just taken by the mobile phone. Here you see some white dots. The next picture will give us a close-up. And what I have a lot in my vineyards as cover crop, this is strawberries. A lot of wild strawberries are growing in my vineyard. And for me, this is the very best way to keep the cover crops low. So strawberries are growing like mad and they are so massively growing that there's no grass coming higher up and making a concurrent situation to the wines in terms of water, but they are nicely covering up the ground, prevent erosion, which is a very big problem for us and which will become bigger by the time. And they are, well, quite delicious, I guess. That was now our Pinot Blanc. For me, the more, maybe the more juicy part from a Pinot Blanc, mouth-watering and perfect to sit and just enjoy some fruit. The next wine will now be a traditional Riesling. Riesling is this, what we are famous for. It's about 80% that we produce, Riesling. And this Riesling is now, with the next click, growing on our most famous vineyard, the Bacharach Hahn. Hahn in English, as you might know, there we go, means rooster. This is why we have the rooster all over our label. And now the next wine is from that rooster vineyard, Bacharach Hahn Riesling Cabinet Fruity Style Vintage 2018. Here you see the Bacharach Hahn. All what you can see on that picture belongs to me. So this is family owned, and on almost every single wine you see here, there is Riesling. The Bacharach Hahn is very closely opened to the Rhine River and very steep. I told you before, the first vineyard is about 25% steep. Bacharach Hahn is steeper, breathtaking steep. The next click gives us the idea about the inner type of Bacharach Hahn. Here we have the pure blue Devonian slate. The orientation is southeast. The steepness now is 70%. So that takes some time to climb up a mountain, and it makes you at the first day maybe wanting to join the gym more often, but after 1 week you feel like you've got enough exercise in the vineyard and you don't need the gym anymore. The age of those wines, what we have now in our glass, is 35 to 40 years old, and here the height above sea level is 100 to 200 meters. So here we have this classical height on which my father, my grandfather, and the other generations rely on for a good quality. The next click will gives us again an idea of the dimensions between my hometown Bacharach. You can see it on the left side, and on the right side, about 1 kilometer out of town, the vineyard Bacharach Hahn. The reason why this vineyard is so special is, as you might see, the Rhine River is bent to a knee around the vineyard, and there we have the possibility to grow our wines directly at the Rhine River. And I just saw the question in the chat. Yes, we have to pick by hand. Honestly, there is just a very few things we can do mechanically. We are doing a lot of things by hand, and I like it. I have to say that this is it just can be done by hand, and this is a very nice work as well. So now this cabinet has a very light smell. It's got a very fruity, almost a peachy taste in the nose. You've got a little touch of green grass, but also a mouth-watering complex sweetness. Very fruity character, a very delicate, light taste, but also a long finish, which makes it perfectly on a hot summer's day, just sitting on the terrace enjoying a sundowner, or to pair it with hot and spicy food, because the sweetness and the balance with the acidity is so nice that it can really work on some hot and spicy flavors as well. The next click gives us again the dimension in the height. I guess we can go here very quickly through. We've got the 100-meter line where the grapes are starting, the 200-meter line on top of my special vineyard Bacharach Hahn, and then the 300-meter line which tops the vineyard that we had before. The next picture is a picture, actually this is taken a few years ago in 2014, where you can see the Bacharach Hahn is a very steep vineyard which has kind of two sides. On the left-hand side, this is open to the valley where you have the other vineyard across the narrow street, and on the right-hand side, you are directly opening to the Rhine River. The wine that we have now in our class, the Bacharach Hahn Cabinet Sweet Style, this is coming from the very top layer of Bacharach Hahn, on the very top right-hand side, opening directly to the Rhine River, one of our steepest vineyards, but because we have so much slate here in, later we are talking about the slate, we have so much slate here in, we have a very nice light structure. And for me, well, I have to find any positive thing about running up and down the steep slopes. The slate really makes a difference. Riesling growing on slate, maybe this is just the way that I'm raised, but Riesling growing on slate always has a very light mineral character. And this is what I love very much about this wine. The next click shows you what I mean with slate. If you are grabbing a handful of soil in my vineyards, as my father did on the left-hand picture, you see a lot of slate. We are famous for our pure slate rocks, especially in the Bacharach Hahn. And imagine having a handful of soil is really looking like my dad's hand at this part. Imagine this poor soil, because it has not much nutrients in, and then compare it to the right-hand picture where you see the big cliff of blue Devonian slate and just 1 or 2 meters of soil. Remember the slate soil my father is keeping before the pure rock is starting. So that forces us to really do not much. We cannot harvest a lot of grapes, because if I would milk my vineyards by just taking out every single drop of juice the vineyard would produce, then I would have just a very light sugar water with no taste. So I like to have a concentrated, full-bodied but light wine, and therefore I like to harvest not every grape that nature gives us, but the first harvest I did this year started in the beginning of July. We went along Bacharach Hahn and we cut away about 1/4 of the grapes, just to make sure that those grapes who remain on the stock can get the best quality, they get the best sunshine, they get the best nutrients, and everything which is too much, we cut away early. We do not let it ripe. We just take it out to get there a very nice concentration and a very good wine when we are going to sell it under the name Toni Jost and Bacharach Hahn. Well, now I talked to you about the problems we are having on the upper floor when it comes to frost. Now, in the traditional vineyards, we have another problem regarding climate change. We have this poor soil, which cannot hold that much water. So we have to irrigate our wines. On the left-hand side, you see our wines in the Bacharach Hahn. You see an old wine, aged probably 20, 25 years, and a black hose with a dripper where water drips down. On the left-hand side, you see that wine, and you see, is it a pond of water or some drips, which you see the wet bottom where the drips are dripping down. We cannot ensure that we have enough water each year to get the best supply for the roots and for the grapes. Not to get the best supply for harvesting the most grapes that we could. I told you before, I don't like the most, I like the best. But sometimes even this is too much for the roots. Sometimes, like in 2020, the year we have today, we have to irrigate. We can irrigate our plants, but when we do not run around with big sprinklers and just blasting water in the air, but we are just giving the small drips exactly at that point where we need it, which is exactly at the roots. When I say we irrigate, we bring about 5, 8 or maximum 10 liters to one wine per week. We have measurements to check how much energy the wine needs to suck the water from the ground. So technically speaking, the leaf is sucking the water from the ground into the leaf for photosynthesis. And we can check how much energy the plant needs for getting the water. According to this stress level, we do irrigate or not. And a few days later, we go again out, we are checking how much energy now the wine needs, so to check if the water really reaches the roots, and if the roots have now easier access to water. Then we keep that, we checking in again and again. So maybe after 1 or after 2 weeks, we have to irrigate again. And then again, we are bringing maximum 10 liters per wine. 10 liters per wine imitates a rainfall of about 6 liters per square meter. So we are very low on our water input. But, well, I know. Now we are in a quite lucky situation that we, in Germany, that I am allowed to irrigate my wines. But I'm pretty sure within the next 20 or 30 years that would become illegal, because freshwater will be a very, might become something which is regulated, because we will not have enough in those days. And for that, I want my roots to know that they are not to spoil water, that they really have to work for water, and they should not get used to an easy supply of water. Therefore, I like to keep them in a positive stress and rather cut away all the grapes than irrigate too much. When I plant today a vineyard, I like to let the vineyard stay for at least 40 years, better 50, sometimes even 60 years. And I strongly believe the older the wine is getting, the better the wine, the juice can taste. So therefore I like, and of course to honor the work of the generations before, I like to keep old wines, and I like my wines to become old. And therefore I don't like to spoil them now with water, so that they might get problems in 10 or in 20 years when we do not have such a water supply like we are having it today. Well, the situation nowadays is, with the next picture, we are almost about to harvest. We have now ripe grapes. Obviously, this is a picture I took from last year because I don't have nowadays that ripe grapes. These are grapes shortly before harvesting. The next picture gives you a grape in the Bacharach Hahn from about 1 week ago. This is how the Riesling is now looking at Bacharach Hahn, and we are having a very early year. Currently, we are thinking about starting harvest, the full blast of harvest, on Monday, the 14th of September. And my grandmother, very old lady, used to tell me that in her days, they were starting to pick Riesling in October. Sometimes it became the beginning of November when they start. This is not happening to me anymore. I like today to harvest the Riesling when it has enough acidity to be very lively, when it is not too overpowered, that it does not, I don't like to harvest Riesling with 40-50 volume% alcohol. That might be good wines, but it's not the style that I like. So we have to be early with harvest. And well, the 14th of September, it is pretty early, but I'm hoping I get all my people ready for this date. What will happen? The next picture gives us a last farewell. We are hoping to start our harvest, to get all the grapes good into the cellar. And after some time in the cellar, you see there the wooden barrels we use for sometimes Riesling, sometimes Pinot Blanc, but also sometimes red wines. And far in the back, you see some stainless steel tanks in which we are fermenting and storing the wines you had now with me. Well, currently we are a lot of cleaning work we are doing. The work in the cellar is 90% cleaning, and this is what we are right now doing. But we are hoping to get out in the fields and to, well, have a nice harvest. If I can hope for anything, then I would like to have from now on no more rain, because every drip of rain may spoil our quality we have in the vineyards. But we are quite confident that we are getting another year in, and who knows, maybe in 2 or 3 years we are sitting here and enjoying the 2020 vintage. Would be great. Now, I've heard there are some questions you'd like to ask. So if anybody would like to ask something, here I am, ready to answer.
That's a very dangerous thing to say, Cecilia. We've had lots of questions come in. Bear with me. I think that the first question that we have is from Brian Thomas. Brian, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Certainly can, Brian.
Hello?
Hi, Brian.
Yes.
Do you want to ask your question?
The question, I was at your winery a few years ago with Annette Schiller and her small group.
I remember.
In the same tasting room as you're sitting in now. And my question is, I find that German dry wines show the characteristics of the soil more so than sweet wines. So for example, when I was at Clement Busch on the Moselle, he made Rieslings from 3 different colors of slate: gray slate, blue slate, and red slate. And you could easily tell the difference between the dry Rieslings from 3 different colors of slate. So do you find that your dry Riesling shows the characteristics more so than the Cabinet or Spätlese?
Yes, in terms of the what we winemakers like to call the terroir, it is so. I believe that a certain amount of sweetness is giving its very own taste to the wine and is kind of masking the very fine difference in between the soil. but I am very poor. I just have blue slate, so I have more the difference in the level in the meter above sea level, where I find the difference in the slate, in the wine taste and in the wine quality. But for the sweetness level, I personally like those very light and elegant wines. I do know that they are coming on the costs of losing a little bit of the terroir experience, but for me, the slatiness still stays on, and this is what I would like to transport in my wines.
Excellent. I think that answers that, hopefully. So Emerson was saying, and actually quite a few people have said, that in areas like New Zealand, they've opted for the large fans that help to circulate the air around the vineyards. Have you thought about doing anything like this in your vineyards? Helicopters have also been mentioned.
Yes, helicopters and fans are working very well. Fans probably better and with a better carbon footprint than helicopters. And when I was working in New Zealand in Vipera, we had this all around our vineyard standing. But I think they are not looking quite nice. We are having troubles in my area of the Mittelrhein with even putting out windmills to produce wind power. So I do not believe that somebody is coming and allowing me to put on fans for the vineyards. It works. It works quite well, but with my situation, I do not see the chance of using them. But friends of mine are trying this with helicopters, and well, the image is quite cool. So if I ever have a YouTube channel, then I would definitely work with helicopters just to have some nice videos for putting online.
I think that sounds absolutely fantastic. It's ever so slightly kind of, I'm thinking James Bond jumping out of the helicopter into your vineyard.
Yes, kind of yes. Thing. If you organize James Bond, I will organize the helicopter, no problem.
Perfect. So the next question we have is from Barbara. Is Barbara there at all?
I am.
Excellent.
I just wondered how many female wine producers there are in your area, or are you quite unique in being the only one?
No, I am very lucky to be not unique and to not be the only one. Let me tell that a little bit. Well, let me put you in a bigger space. So I studied winemaking at Geisenheim at the university. Nowadays, it is a fashion to go to university and to study their winemaking and to have some kind of more education than just work with another winemaker and learning things by that. So I went to Geisenheim to study winemaking. My dad used to went to Geisenheim before me. My dad went there in the late 60s, and he was studying together with 12 people in his class, and they had one female winemaker 2 classes above him. This is the ground where my dad was studying. Today, when I studied 15 years ago, I studied together with 120 people. So we had 10 times as much people as my dad has in his year. And we have about 50% female winemakers studying at Geisenheim. So today we are a very liberal crowd. This is where I come from my educational point of view. When I look around here in my hometown, well, it is not our fault as female winemakers that we have so much female winemakers. It's just that most of the winemakers just produce female offspring. My parents just set in 3 children, 3 girls in the world. The neighbor always also fathered just 3 girls. And well, it's then kind of natural that there are more female winemakers coming up. But I get to ask those questions kind of often. But this is, when I talk to colleagues, this is very nice that everybody is having the same opinion. It does not matter if you're male or female. The kind of work you're doing is important. And today, well, you have to work in all kind of, in all professions. And I just would feel very uncomfortable just sitting behind a desk and just working on the computer all day long. So for me, I just have to go out and I have to do something with my hands. My sisters are quite different. They are very happy with working in front of the computer, but well, the one person has found its way in going outside and getting wet and dirty and later cleaning up herself. And the other one is more, well, more of the type of computer work, and that's completely okay.
Excellent. So we're just debating on which question to ask next. So I think we've now got Mike, who wanted to ask a question about your range. Mike, are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent.
Good. Good evening. I've really enjoyed your presentation, and I was somewhat, I've learned quite a bit about the fact that this is far more technical than I ever thought it was, particularly when you're talking about the energy required to get the water out of the ground. Fascinating. I have a particular, I mean, I have some of your 2011 dry Riesling from Hahn, and lovely. It's still drinking extremely well. But I also have a love of sweet wines, and I was wondering whether you do any Auslese or even Beerenauslese. That requires rather late picking, I think, doesn't it? And from slightly shriveled grapes. And I don't know whether your area lends itself to that or not.
Yes, we do produce mainly dry Riesling. About 70% what I'm doing is dry, but we also have the fruity ones, like we tasted the Cabinet, but we also have more superior sweet qualities like Spätlese and Auslese. Normally I try to produce each year a Cabinet. A Spätlese is done, well, in 99 out of 100 years, or let's say in 49 out of 50 years. But an Auslese is more of an achievement. Therefore, we need perfect weather conditions for almost all over the harvest. We need at first superior quality. And then those grapes of superior quality have to shrivel in. And we need a fungal infection. This is not dangerous in terms of cheese, is just spoiled milk. This is a fungus, Botrytis, which appears naturally in the area. You find this on roses and on peppers as well. This fungus infects the skin. The skin gets permeable, and in dry conditions, water can evaporate from the skin out and leaves the skin shriveled like a raisin. Those raisined skins have to be picked and have to select. This is where the word Auslese comes from. Auslese means selection, and we are doing this ever when we have enough time. When we have the best weather conditions, so we have the time to harvest this, and when we have enough people to harvest all the grapes in a decent amount of time. This may not happen each year, because sometimes we are just running out of time because of bad weather. But when we can, we are very lucky to produce even Auslese, Beerenauslese, or in some years even Trockenbeerenauslese.
Fantastic. I do think that Marcel has a few more of your wines tucked up his sleeve, not literally, but in the warehouses, and he's keeping them back, isn't he? I think he's got a special event coming on with these wines.
I'm sure of this. That there are definitely some more of my wines than just the two we are now tasting. Maybe you should get. Maybe you should ask again. Maybe if enough people are asking, then there might be some more releases of the special wines from the Mittelrhein area. But yeah, there might be coming up something new.
Believe so. We'll see what we can do. I have a feeling they're probably coming out for the kind of Christmas list, but I have to say, having tried those two, I cannot wait for the others as well. You've become my #1 favourite. So keeping an eye on time, we've got one more question. We were going to ask, so you've got two quite different styles here, in terms of your Pinot, your Weißburgunder and your Riesling. What food matches would you tend to put these wines with? Quite a few people have been really interested in this.
Okay. All right, the Pinot Blanc, I would suggest as an all-time food pairing wine. You can have the Pinot Blanc together with more light dishes. You can have this with fish, you can have it with a creamy sauce, you can have it with what I like very much, I forgot the English word. It's not bunny, it's the bunny with the short ears. Kaninchen in German.
Rabbit?
Yes, yes. If you have this in a sauce with maybe mustard or in a creamy sauce, this is very excellent. You can have the Pinot Blanc together with a soup. When you have a soup of onions, a little bit smoked flavors on. When you have prawns or seafood in soup, this is very lovely. And of course, the Cabinet in the fruity way as a single wine, just with some fruits, soaked in a little bit of sugar to get more the flavors out. You can have it, as I mentioned, with hot and spicy food, or as I now find out quite recently in summertime, if you barbecue a steak, if you have it really flavored with those roast aromas, then just a plain steak, a lot of roast aromas, maybe not too well done, and salt, and pair this with an ice cold fruity Cabinet. You have the spiciness from the roast crust, and you also have the sweetness and a little bit of spiciness from that Cabinet. This gives a very nice balance. Quite unusual, but in summertime drinking while sitting outside and enjoying a glass of wine and waiting for the barbecue is done, this is perfect.
That sounds really interesting, actually. I'd never thought of having a Cabinet with a steak, but I suppose you're talking about if you have that kind of that slightly savory umami kind of crust.
Yes, yes.
It works really well with the slight sweetness that you have in the Riesling, which is fascinating. I've always put your Riesling with pork, roast pork.
This is also a great choice. Yes. I don't like to think just in very strict forms. I believe wine, to produce wine is kind of, the first wine was probably produced by just putting grapes to a side and they got rotten and people tasted and said, well, that's okay. So I think there should not be dogma in which to think about how to use that wine now. Just try to pair it with whatever you like and maybe you get surprised.
It's absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. So just having a check of time, I've seen that we've hit 7 o'clock now. So I think the time has come for me to say thank you so much to you, Cecilia, for joining us this evening with your beautiful wines. They're absolutely gorgeous. To all those of you who are watching, we really, really do hope that you've enjoyed this event. All feedback is obviously welcome. The video will be going live onto YouTube and I'll send you the email link tomorrow. For those of you who are interested, we've also got a series of producer-focused virtual events coming up over the course of this month. So got lunch with the boys from We're in Australia, Rioja Roundtable event, Idina Vinet from Argentina, Coile from Chile, Vaseline d'Espagne from Bordeaux. So do check out the tastings page. But I have to say that, Cecilia, I think this has been one of our highlights. It's been an absolutely fabulous virtual event. So thank you so much. We were supposed to be seeing you in the flesh. Gosh, when was it? It was beginning of this year, wasn't it? Was it around April?
Yes.
That you were supposed to be coming over. So this has been a long time in the making, but we really appreciate your time and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Okay.
So thank you.
all the best to Great Britain. I hope to see you all again in the virtual room or maybe in person when we can finally meet again. So stay safe and always enjoy a good glass of wine. Cheers.
Of course. Cheers to you as well. And thank you everybody for watching.